Hello and welcome, Breakthrough Success listeners. I'm your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast where you'll learn how to achieve the breakthroughs you've been looking for in your business and life. If you want to grow your content brand, you'll definitely want to add my latest book, Content Marketing Secrets, to your reading list. This book will teach you how to create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue. You can get your copy at Mark Guberti, that is Mark with a C. So markguberti.com/book. And now, let's dive right into the show. For episode 70 of the Breakthrough Success podcast, we are going to talk about choosing a book topic and organizing our content around that topic with our guest, Sarah Barbour. Sarah is a book coach and editor for entrepreneurs with stories to tell. She helps authors get focused on their goals and audience, establish a realistic timeline for their books, keep them accountable to their writing targets, and walk them through the self-publishing process. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Sarah to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's lovely to be here.
Sarah, it is a pleasure to have you on the Breakthrough Success podcast. And before we dive really deep into choosing that book topic and organizing our content, I'd like to get some backstory. So why books? What first got you interested in helping authors with their books?
Well, I started off as an editor. I've had various professional editing type jobs over the course of my life. And then about 15 years ago, I decided to stay home with my kids for a little while. It turned into a long while. And I thought, well, maybe I can put some of those editing skills to use in a freelance position. So I started editing. And right around 2011, I guess, was when the self-publishing boom really started to take off. And I ended up getting quite a lot of editing work, which was great. And I started learning more and more about the self-publishing world, about the people who wanted to write books and were getting their messages out in not a new medium, but a new way of expressing that medium, because self-publishing has opened up so much for authors and has made the publishing process much faster. It's put a lot more control in authors' hands. So it's been fascinating to watch that develop. And over the course of that time, I've written 7 books of my own, 3 nonfiction and 4 fiction, and have gotten the opportunity to work with a lot of different people, both fiction writers and nonfiction writers. But from a book coaching point of view, I tend to work with people who are writing books somehow in the service of their businesses. So sometimes they kind of have this idea that they're supposed to write a book, like, oh, everybody else in my industry has written a book, I have to write one too. Sometimes they feel called to write a book because they feel like they've got this message that a book would be a really good medium to share that message through. And so I kind of help them figure out what to write, how to get the actual writing done, because that seems very intimidating to people, especially if you've never written a book before. The thought of committing 40, 50, 60,000 words to the page can be a little frightening, but it can be done, and it can be done a lot faster, I think, than a lot of people realize. And then if they need me to, I help walk them through the self-publishing process. So that also is one of those things that if you don't know what you don't know, it can seem incredibly intimidating, and it really is just a kind of series of steps that you have to go through, but it helps to have somebody show you what to do next and explain the whole process. So that's kind of where I came from and how I've evolved in my own work into helping entrepreneurs write books.
Sarah, thank you for sharing with us that backstory. And as you've helped a lot of entrepreneurs write their own books, I mean, the self-publishing has such a great opportunity, but if you can't pick a topic for your book, then it doesn't matter, because you can have all these different ideas. If you don't get one of them out there at all, you have no book. So for people who either are struggling to think of their first topic, or their heads are like swirling with different topic ideas, how do we get clear on the topic for either our first book or for our next book?
Well, one thing I always like to remind people is you don't have to write just one book. You can write more than one. And in fact, it's often not a bad idea to start with something very short, maybe a 5,000 or 10,000 word book, which is an opportunity to reach out to maybe a very specific set of people and solve one specific set of problems for them. This is especially nice if you're just getting started in what you're doing and you need to build your email list. You can offer this as a lead magnet. You can offer this as a very easy way to get to know what you're doing and just kind of get yourself out there as somebody who is capable of writing something beyond simply a blog post. And then, you can advance to the next stage if you want and write a longer, more complex book. But I think it helps a lot to start with, don't get too complicated. A lot of us have a lot of ideas and we know a lot about our businesses and what we're doing. And it's more often the case, I think, that the struggle is to narrow that down rather than find enough to talk about. So I suggest that people talk to the people in their market, people on their mailing list, people in their Facebook groups, and talk to them about what they need. What do they want to hear? What do they need help with? And then think about what you personally have to bring to that topic. How can you, what sets you apart? What's your unique selling proposition? What do you have that other people don't have? And how can you put your own personal spin on that? Because a book is a nice opportunity to really get to know somebody on a slightly deeper level. It's not just a Facebook post. It's a little bit more than a blog post. It's a way to kind of go in depth and give people challenges. Say this. These are the instructions on things on something I want you to try. This is the background. This is the case study. These are all of these elements working together to present a concept as a whole. So, that's one of the things that I work with my clients is figuring out what's going to suit them personally based on their knowledge, what's going to help their audience most, and what's going to look good for their business.
Sarah, thank you for providing those insights on choosing that book topic. And you mentioned earlier how we have to write 40 to 60,000 words for a book. I mean, some books are not that long. You see some people writing a lot of 20,000 word books and writing them in huge quantities. But regardless of what word count you pick, that's a lot of words. So yes. How do we go from that book topic to finished product?
Okay. I think it's always wise to start off with an outline and understand that you are almost certainly going to deviate from that outline. But one suggestion that I give to people is to think of books that you admire and want to emulate and study their table of contents, because the table of contents is basically like an outline. And it gives you an overview of how books are structured. And it can be really, really helpful when you kind of get that high level overview and can say, oh, okay, this book is, it's divided into 7 distinct parts or 3 distinct parts or 2 distinct parts. Maybe it is a before and after sort of setup. Maybe it's something like the Cialdini book, Persuasion, where you've got, is it 6 or 7 specific marketing steps or marketing concepts, and he has a chapter for each one, and that's it. That's the entire book. Each concept is a chapter. It could be a before, during, and after. It could be a theory and practice setup. So think about kind of the high-level overview, because that's going to help control and contain your thoughts, and you'll find it a lot easier to get the writing done if you can say, okay, the section that I'm working on now is the section where I talk about the theory behind what I'm talking about. And then the next section I will talk about the practice, and the next section I will talk about case studies. So I would say start by organizing the book, even before you start writing. And then the writing itself it seems intimidating, but if you kind of break it down this way, if you wrote 500 words a day, then in a little bit more than 3 months, you could potentially have a 50,000 word draft. So it's not really a long time. You don't have to spend years and years and years writing your book. might take a little bit longer than that. It might take a little less time than that, depending on how much you write and how organized you are about your writing. But these big numbers don't have to be as intimidating as they sound at first blush. They aren't necessarily that scary if you commit to writing every day. And I do suggest that you write every single day, even if you hit a point where you don't know what to write and you're just writing, I don't know what to write, again and again and again. As long as you stay in that habit of writing consistently, and I would say writing ideally in the same place at the same time every day, if you can swing that. Not everybody can, but if you can, that is tremendously helpful in forming the habit of writing. And once you're in that habit, you will get to a point where you don't want to break it. If you'll find that if you're not writing, especially in that time, in that place that you've chosen, you'll feel a little off and you'll be anxious to write, and that will spur your ideas. It will spur your dedication to the book and help you get it done faster.
Sarah, thank you for sharing those insights with us. And I actually recently started implementing writing every single day. It was something that I'd done it a while ago, and then I dropped it, and then I went back into it. And I definitely agree that writing every day, it makes you a better writer. It makes it easier for you to hit those big word counts. But when you do have that final draft in front of you, you do have to it's coming to go back and edit what you've written. But people don't like editing their work. So how do you recommend that we edit our work so that it's better, but it's not like painful to go back and edit?
Well, I think at some point it is going to be painful, maybe not necessarily. At some point in the process, it might be the writing, it might be the editing, it might be the publishing. Pretty much everybody hits a wall at some stage where you just think, this sucks. I suck. It all sucks. I'm not going to do this. I can't. And eventually, hopefully, you push through that. But it's very, very common, and I don't want to give people the idea that it's all smooth sailing and you just check off these boxes and everything will work perfectly, because everybody I've worked with, and every time I've written one of my own books, there's always a stage where you go through thinking, I just can't do this. There's no point. It's not worth it. And it is. You just have to kind of push through that stage. So sometimes people hit that at the editing stage. You go back and you read your draft and you're like, oh, gosh, what do I do? It's not that good. It's not what I hoped it would be. But a first draft is not supposed to be good. The first draft is getting your ideas out, and you shouldn't be worrying about spelling or grammar or fact checking at that point. The idea is just to get it all out on paper, on the screen, wherever. And then you can start the process of organizing it. So then you want to go back and look at your outline. Does it still work? Is that the outline that you really need for this book? Is it something that you might, once you've gone through it yourself, it might help to get some feedback, either from a professional editor or from somebody you trust, who is in more or less your market for the book. So, you don't hand off your business book to somebody who only ever reads science fiction. Give it to somebody who respects that market, understands how business books are supposed to be written and what they're supposed to convey, and ask them for just sort of reader feedback. And people like that are called beta readers. They're tremendously useful. And authors use them at various stages during the editing process. But they are, a good beta reader is worth their weight in gold. They'll give you hopefully honest feedback, and feedback that you would get from a real reader, as opposed to somebody, an editor who might be thinking more in terms of the structure of the book, or a copy editor or a proofreader who's going to be helping you with the grammar and the spelling and the sentence flow. The beta reader is just kind of giving you that gut level reader reaction. So definitely go back and read your own draft first. Try, if you can, to put it aside for a little while between the time you finish the draft and between the time, and then pick it up again. Because I think if you can give it a couple of weeks to just step away from it, you can come back to it with somewhat more fresh eyes. Otherwise, it's, you just get so sunk into it that you can't see the forest for the trees. And at this point, you might want to think about fixing things up. Like if if you need to go back and fact check, if you need to go back and maybe something has happened since you began writing it. And you say, oh, I've got a better example now, or I need to go ask permission to use this quote, or I need to go check what year, if I wrote down the right year for this example. Any little things like that that's the time just to think about doing them. Try reading it out loud. That's one that feels really weird, but can be tremendously useful in terms of catching errors, catching weird sentence flow. And we'll also just kind of give you can also set up your, if you've got a text reader that you can set up, have your computer read you the book, and it'll just help you be more objective. And once you hear that information, as opposed to seeing it, it will just give you a different perspective on the book, and that might help you catch all sorts of things. Like I said, from funky sentence structure to ideas that are missing or ideas that don't need to be there in the first place.
Sarah, thank you for sharing those insights on how we can do better jobs at editing our content. And I mean, editing is not something like, yes, I get to edit today. This is going to be so much fun. I mean, it's definitely not like that, but it is something that we do have to do in order to increase the value of our books. And I know that you've coached a lot of authors and you've helped other authors as well. And in all of your experience of helping authors and seeing writers develop, what do you believe holds most people back from writing their own book?
I think that fear, obviously. I mean, fear is kind of what holds most of us back from doing anything. So maybe that's not very specific, but people fear the commitment. They feel like a book is a big thing. It's going to take years. It's, I think we have this idea in our heads, our cultural consciousness of the artist as being this tortured person who has to live up in the attic, and it's cold and he's poor and he's typing his masterpiece on this ancient typewriter, and he's never going to be appreciated in his lifetime. And that has kind of seeped through even into the modern computer day and age. And when we don't have to sit in the cold and drafty attic writing our books. And I think we have an idea that book writing is going to be painful. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it doesn't have to be this horrible, emotionally wrenching experience either. And I think a lot of people kind of fear that somehow it is going to be. I think they say to themselves, I just can't write that many words. It's going to take years to get it done. And how am I going to know if it's any good? And what if nobody buys it? So before you get to the point of worrying about whether anyone's going to buy it, I would say start at the beginning and actually start writing it. And I think those are the big things. I think the process of writing is very, very intimidating to people. And then there's the fear that what if I do all this work and nobody reads it, nobody likes it, then it's a big waste of time. Those, I don't want to say that they're completely unfounded, because you can make the book writing process much harder for yourself than it needs to be. And if you don't market the book, no one's going to buy it, and that sucks. But you can certainly, there's many, many people can talk to you about how to market books and market all sorts of things. It's not substantially different to market a book than to market everything else that you're marketing. So it can be done. And I would strongly encourage anybody who feels called to write a book to write the book. Not everybody needs to write a book. Not everybody wants to write a book. And I don't think you should force yourself to write a book just because everybody else in your industry is doing it. But if you feel like a book is something that would help you personally and make you feel accomplished and would help you professionally and help you get your word out to people, then I think it is absolutely worth doing.
Sarah, thank you for sharing with us what you feel holds most people back from writing their books and sharing some insights for people who may be on the fence of whether to write their own book or not. And the journey of an author, it may feel like that this journey is filled with so many challenges, but that's true with any journey that you take. It's going to be filled with challenges that we need to overcome. And with that in mind, Sarah, I'm wondering, what is one big challenge that you have faced along your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge?
Well, like a lot of writers, I have dealt with writer's block at various points. And in fact, I've been sort of struggling through it just recently. I'm writing a new novel, and I'm trying to work out the plot, and I've been struggling with that. And I mean, there are a lot of different ways to approach writer's block, and many of them are very good. You know, they all work for somebody. For myself, I would say that I just have to keep writing. And sometimes I want to wait until it's all lined up in my head, until I've got the outline perfect. And I think, well, once I've got all of that worked out, then I can start writing. And there's something to be said for that. But on the other hand, I find that for myself, I have to just keep writing every day, even if it's not good, even if I know I'm going to throw it out eventually, even if it's not directly related to the book that I'm trying to write. Just being in that habit of continuing to write allows me to gain insights to the book that I want to get out that wouldn't otherwise come to me, I think. So I would say that if that is an issue for people, my answer is just to keep writing and do other things. Meditation is fantastic. There's all sorts of different writing exercises and challenges that people do to kind of break through that block. But I'd say the big one is just be in that habit of writing, because the very act of writing, especially if you're just allowing yourself to kind of free associate once in a while, will trigger ideas that you didn't even know were in there. And then that can restart the writing process and get you through that block.
Sarah, thank you for sharing with us that big challenge and some of the lessons you learned during that challenge. And one question I love to ask people, because I, as Breakthrough Success listeners know, am a really big bookworm. So I'm wondering, what are 3 great books that you could think of that would be great for Breakthrough Success listeners?
That's a tough one. There's so many. Okay, so one of the oldies but goodies is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I read, 25 years ago or so, and it was such a great breakthrough in terms of how I viewed the world, and made me more efficient, made me more attuned to what other people needed and wanted, and put me in a better place to help them with what they were trying to do. So it's a classic for a reason. So I love that book. Before I was listening to some of your other podcasts, and I know you've had Jeff Goins on. I don't know how recently, but not too long ago. And he's always worth reading. He talks a lot about, he writes a lot about writing, about putting creative work out onto the market, getting it out of your head and into the world. I think anything by him is great, but Real Artists Don't Starve is a good one. And just yesterday, actually, I picked up a book called From Where You Dream, and it's about fiction writing specifically, but I think it would apply to different types of writing. The author is Robert Olin Butler, and it talks about sort of getting in touch with your unconscious to bring up these ideas that maybe your analytical mind is getting in the way of. And it's an interesting book. I haven't even finished it yet. Like I said, I just picked it up yesterday, but I've already read about 3/4 of it, and I have found it I think the ideas in it are really, really useful, especially for writers.
Sarah, thank you for sharing with us those 3 great book recommendations. And before we close out this episode, and before we even get to the point where I let you share with Breakthrough Success listeners where to find you, I've asked you a lot of questions throughout this interview, and I'm wondering, what is one question we need to be asking ourselves more often?
I would love for all of us, myself included, to think more in terms of how we can serve the world. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in especially in the kind of entrepreneurial world. Everyone is always hustling and selling, and they should. That's what they're there for. But I think we get very competitive with each other. And we're, so-and-so's doing much better. He's making a 6-figure income and I need to be doing better. And I think it's helpful to step back once in a while and just see if we can let that go and say, okay, how can I serve? What can I do or be or say that is going to make the world a better place, whether I'm doing that for money or just because it's the right thing to do. Because I think that makes us better people, happier people. And I like to think that we can spread that through the world a little bit and make the world a little bit better.
Excellent message with that question, Sarah. And I really do love that idea of serving others. There are so many ways to do it, but the only ways that matter are ones that we actually do. So that is a question that I believe we should all ask ourselves every day. And thank you for giving us that question.
Sure. Thank you for asking it. It's a great question.
Well, Sarah, thank you for sharing all of your great insights and that great question. And for all the Breakthrough Success listeners wondering, where can we find you on the web?
Okay. I have a company called Adventure Inc., and you can find it online at adventure.ink. And I would love to see anybody there. I have a free program that will show you how to start a writing habit. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a live version of it starting at the beginning of January. So if you wanted to, you can sign up for the online course right now, or you can join in January for the live version. I did it last January. It was a lot of fun. Got a lot of people in, and got a lot of people starting to write. So definitely check me out there. I've also got a lot of articles on my blog about self-publishing in particular, and writing and how books can help your business, and interviews with authors and things. So there's plenty there if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the book writing world.
All right, Breakthrough Success listeners, those links, the Jeff Goins episode and more will all be in the show notes at markgaburi.com/E70. Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you on the Breakthrough Success podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It was lovely to be here. I appreciate you having me.
To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through markgaburi.com/iTunes or markgaburi.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock. Want your tweets get retweeted to my 360,000 Twitter followers? All you have to do is say something nice about the Breakthrough Success podcast and include the link markgaburi.com/iTunes. Once you've posted that tweet, email me, mark@markgaburi.com, and I will retweet your tweet to my 360. This podcast is a production done by Mark Gaburi. For more insights, head on over to markgaburi.com.